This is a level 1 architecture photo edit, and this is a level 37 edit. And at the end of this video, I'm going to show you a level 95 edit. As the levels go up, the editing gets more precise, more in-depth, and more challenging. Now, let's take a look at what we did in the level 1 photo. Right here, we basically just did a few local adjustments in Adobe Camera Raw, and then erased some of the distractions. So you can see this layer here, layer 1. What did we do? I've got some sensor dust up here. I should have cleaned that before the photo shoot. That is on all of the shots from this shoot. Super annoying. Had to clean that up. And then I got rid of this outlet and its reflection down here. And that's pretty much it. There we go. Before and after. I also got rid of the can light at the top. That's level 1. Moving on, let's go to level number 12. Here's the final shot. And let's see where we started. All of these shots were taken at the exact same photo shoot, the same house. It was for an architect that is based in Hawaii, and the project is in Hermosa Beach, California. So I made my way out there and shot this beautiful entryway. What I did here was I made 2 virtual copies of this image. Reason being is that I wanted to make sure that when I blended things in, all of these leaves that were blowing in the wind would be lined up perfectly. So for the first virtual copy, it looks like this. It's just a darker image, and I blended in some of the highlights, specifically over on the right side over here. So bringing back detail in the blown out spots, getting the texture back in on this wall over here. So you can see before and after. The next virtual copy, was it the same darkness? Yeah, it was the same darkness. We just blended in a little bit more. So blended in some of the left side and a little bit more on the top, almost like creating a vignette with that darker image. And then of course I got my fixes layer here. So what did I fix? We removed this cable that was for the elevator, a little bit of the stuff going on up here, and there was like a little wet spots from where we removed the floor mat. So boom, all of that disappears. You can also see, I believe, a tripod leg maybe in the reflection here. Some little scuff marks or just little, I don't know, things that might catch your attention on the stainless steel door. So we got rid of those. And then my pop. I add this curves adjustment layer. You can see here, I usually use a linear contrast in the little preset menu. It's typically the final thing that I do to my images to kind of give them one little final pop of contrast. So I added that, but you can also see that I didn't add it down here where it was a little bit darker. So there is our final image of a level 12 edit. Now, moving on to level 37. Things are getting a little more difficult here. Here's the final image, a beautiful living space. This was super fun to shoot, and I really like the final photo here. So let's take a look at what we did. Turn off all these layers. This is what we started with, a bright ambient base. This was shot a little bit earlier in the day than I would have liked. It would have been great if this was a little closer to sunset, but we still had these long shadows coming through. The problem was it just made a really hot spot out here on the ocean and view. So what we did next was we brought in this layer. It's at 30%, so let me bump that up. Basically a darker layer. Drop that down to 30% and brushed in some of the highlights there. So just recovering highlights in the floor. Basically, that was what this was geared to do. Highlights down here. There we go. Next one, this looked like this, another darker shot. And this is at 50% opacity now. So blending in a little bit more of the hot spots and adding some darkness back into the image. Next, we went outside. So when we add in the outside view, it looks like this. This was another copy of that mid-ambient layer. Blended in with Raya Pro. I used one of these Instamasks over here from Raya Pro to do this. And then I didn't want it on all of the image. I only wanted it in the outside view. So I masked off the outside view. So all these marching ants, that's everything that's in this little layer here. Boom, boom. And of course, to do that, I think I probably did a work path, but maybe I didn't save it. Whatever the case, I had to cut out around all that stuff. And then I came in and took care of my fireplace. So this is my client, the architect John Black, and I had some flashes set up in the room. And basically I wanted to make sure that this black box looked like a black box and not like a big reflection or a mirror. So I painted that in, and there you have it. Just painted that one little square in. Then I have my fixes layer, as always. So I'm going to remove some of these things on the ceiling. What else did I remove? Whoops. I removed the trash cans from on the beach. And there's some, little reflections over here, and there was some straps blowing in the wind from the volleyball net. So I got rid of all that just to clean it up. Then the TV, I overlaid a black overlay at just 80% opacity to knock down that reflection a little bit. And then I used this warming filter. So I like this warming filter 85, and when you turn that on, it just kind of warms up the entire image. But I usually only set it to anywhere from like 20 to 40% opacity. So that's what we did here. It's at 40%. And then of course my pop layer. Once again, it's just this linear contrast. And there is the final image. That's level 37. We're moving on up. If you like what you see and you want to learn more of what goes into my editing techniques, you can check out the replay of the editing workshop that I did. That's available at adamtaylorphotos.com/education. Now, level 54. Here we go. This is an interesting one because it's a small bathroom. There's not a lot of natural light, and the lighting in the bathroom was important to capture. So, where did we start? In order to get these lights not super blown out and creating the entire room looking orange, we had to pop flashes. So back here, what do we have going on? The camera is obviously right in front of the mirror. And then I put up a black curtain above this door because this door was letting in light from the garage area, which caused like a little hot spot on the cabinets here. I had a flash probably somewhere over here in the shower area, or like to the camera left there was like a toilet, so I popped the flash, bounced off the ceiling. But that flash made a little hot spot down here. So what did I do? Brought in another flash shot. This is in darken mode. If we see it in normal mode, you can see that this time the flash pop had a bright spot at the top. So pop that into darken mode, and now it's a little more even. So now we kind of have what I would call my even flash exposure, and we can start building the image off of this. So from here, we have yet another flash pop, and where did I use this one? Let's see. Basically right here in the middle of the frame, I just cut out that little square and pop that in. That way this glass is a little bit brighter, and the exposure or the curtain is gone from on top of the window. I made sure to get a frame without that curtain. And then I just darkened it up a little bit because the whole thing was a little too bright. So I used a adjustment layer to drop down the exposure just a little 0.23. Next up, moving right along, this is this glass right here. So I believe that was in luminosity mode. So what happens if we don't put it in luminosity mode? We can see the whole shot. What did I do here? I think there was no flashes. This was, I think, the way it looked without any flashes. And I like the way this glass looked. So do that, but now the glass is like super blue looking. So put it in luminosity mode, and that tones it right down, and it looks more appropriate. Next up, what do we got? From the flashes being popped on the left side, we had some harsh shadows over here under the towel. So I blended in some of the ambient frame over there. This is ambient with no lights on in the bathroom. I think it's important to always shoot with the lights off, just to make sure you have as much possible information to blend into there. And I'm really glad that I remembered that on this image, because the natural shadow underneath this towel, I think, looks much better. So there we go. Next we have my fixes layer. So of course I'm going to get rid of the outlet and the little screws up here and my dust, that sensor dust, and obviously get rid of the camera. And then from the distortion correction in camera raw, I had this little slither over here of empty pixels. So I fixed that, of course, with my fixes layer. Now it's time to deal with the colors. And this one has a lot of colors going on because of the kind of bluish green glass and the flash pops and the orange lights we have going on here. So this is a desaturation layer. It looks like I desaturated everything by 50%, and basically did that to all the kind of grayish areas in the image. Did the same thing, took the same areas, those walls, and then just warmed them up a little bit, again with that warming filter, this time at 20% opacity. So after I desaturated the walls, I just warmed up the walls a little bit. And then I desaturated the blue on the left-hand side. You can see exactly where that was done over here. Again, an adjustment layer, just with probably the cyans and the blues. Yeah, cyans down 34, blues down 25, and now my tile and glass is not so blue-green looking. Then this little section right in here looked a little bit too bright still, so I just took that area, isolated it, and dropped it down with a curves adjustment layer by doing this. Then of course I did my final pop, and I thought that looks pretty good, but overall if you look at the histogram, it's still a little bit darker than I would like. So I just added a slight adjustment layer here and bumped it up 0.17. And that is level 54 architecture photo edit. Moving on up the ladder, things are getting a little more complicated, a little more challenging here. And now we have a beautiful office with a gorgeous ocean view. And this is the final image. But let's see where we started. Whew. Now you see we have a lot of work on our hands to do. I started with the bright base, and then I did a mid bright. So this one looked like this, just a little bit brighter of an image. Blended that in with one of my favorite actions, which is Hunter Lomoyesva's exposure blend. You can get that for free on my YouTube channel. Shout out to Hunter. He did a great job of coming up with this action that I've programmed in. I don't know what it does, but go to my YouTube and download the action for free. Now, moving back along, we've got that blended in. Then we've got a mid. This was a bright mid. Now we have a mid-mid. It looks like this, and blended back in with, again, probably I used Hunter's blend and then did a little hand blending in some places as well. Now it looks like this. Now we're starting to build up to a more even exposure here. Next up, I did a flash frame. So this is my flash pop. It's at 50% now, but the full flash frame looks like this. Way too flashy, obviously, but let's blend some of that in and drop it down to 50% opacity. And now it's looking pretty good. I probably used this fast flambient blend created by Nathan Cool. That's probably how I got that blend. That is also available for free on the same video as I talked about Hunter's blend. So shout out to Nathan Cool. He's got some great YouTube content and helped with this fast flambient that I use quite often. Next, we work on the outside view. So at this point, the inside has got a pretty good exposure blend going on. Now we need to work on the outside view. So for this one, this was a dark ambient shot. And of course, I just painted in the outside view here. And now things are looking a lot better. Next up, guess who jumped on top of the counter? Yeah, you can see down here, these are my white Crocs that I wear for all my residential photo shoots. They are indoor house slippers that allow me to walk around in somebody's house without dragging in dirt from outside and without hurting my feet all day. So I got up here with my trusty curtain that has a dowel rod put in it and blocked the reflection on this artwork. So now I have artwork without reflections. Bada boom, bada bing. Next up, my fixes layer. So we've got lots of things. Of course, my dust sensor. We've got these little 3M strips on the wall. We've got this big rat's nest of wires and junk back here. We've got a garbage can. And we've got some scratches on the window. So let's fix all of that with one click. Boom. Didn't quite get everything back here. So what I did was used a couple of layers in this little folder to get rid of all that. What I did was basically copy this over here and kind of put it in over on this side to make it have a clean look behind the computers. So there's that. Boom and boom. Then we've got a couple of different screens. We've got 3 screens to deal with. Screen in the center has a little bit more of a reflection, so that one's going to be set at 80%, just a little black overlay. The other 2 screens set at 50% because they don't have quite as much going on. Then I noticed the ocean wasn't super straight. If you put a grid line on there, you see the ocean's not straight. And we know the Earth is flat, right? No, I'm just kidding. The horizon should always be flat. So I straightened out the ocean with this layer. Next up, did some color adjustments. So there's a lot of blue going on in here on top of the counter and on the wall. So I got rid of some of that with a blue adjustment layer, or a hue saturation adjustment layer, and came to the blue tab, dropped that down all the way to 72. Then my trusty warming filter at 20% warmed up the whole image quite nicely. And then I thought the bottom seemed a little too bright for how bright the ocean view is. So I used an adjustment layer down here, dropped it down 0.34, and then put this gradient filter so that it was mostly on the bottom and it gradiated as you go up. And then one final pop. There we have it, final photo, level 78. Now moving up to the most difficult edit of this entire photo shoot. This is a level 9 edit. Level 95 edit. And here we go. This is the final image, and boy, it was a doozy. So hold on to your hats as we unpack this one. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, here we go, guys. I started with this bright base, and that was a blend of this image and this image. So what I did here was use a circular polarizing filter, shot one image, and then turned it 90 degrees, shot another image. Reason being is that the polarizing filter right here hits the ground, but it doesn't hit the vertical surfaces like this fireplace and what else? The window over here maybe. So anyways, I did that. And then I did the same, and then I put it into darken mode so that it would blend those two images together. So you got the back of the chair that had a reflection on it, a little bit more recovered over here in this vertical surface, and on the horizontal surface, without that darken mode, you would have had a reflection on the floor like this. So put it in darken mode, all the reflections are blended into a more even exposure. But what I decided was this was actually too bright, so I basically did the same thing with my mid exposure. So once again, I've got darken mode for my CPL turned 90 degrees, and then the other shot here. So you can see it recovers detail in the wood and the stainless steel, but it allows me to keep that detail in the floor as well. So there we go, CPL's blended with darken mode. Then I made a copy of that ambient blend and blended in some more of the darks, so you can see. Let's see, is that the same blend? Oh yeah, you know what? This actually is only at 50%. So I thought this was too bright, but this one at 100% was too dark to start. So I just split it down the middle, dropped it down to 50%, and then made a copy of that blend, put it at 100%, so it was much darker. And now I used Hunter's exposure blend up here in my actions to blend this together. And just for funsies, I'm going to delete this layer mask and show you what it looks like when you hit play on this Hunter's exposure blend. It does some crazy magic and helps to blend in some of those bright spots. So I really like that. I did the same thing again over here at darker exposure using Hunter's exposure blend, blended in even more. Now I'm starting to kind of build back towards the hot spot in the back and even out that exposure as we move through the frame. Then I did another bright spot recover. This would have been using the Raya Pro Instamask over here. So blended that in, and now we've recovered a lot of these bright spots in the far back. I did a similar thing out here, but by hand. I took this flash frame where everything was lit up with a flash and cut out basically just this outside view. So by hand, cut out all these little spaces and painted those back in. And now we've got some ground that looks a little bit better. We've got a view that looks really nice. And things are looking pretty blended now. Then we've got this little bench over here. Just recovered some of that. I believe that was with a flash frame that I dropped the contrast down. Just blended in a little bit of the detail in this bench so that it's a little more even. Next, we dealt with the fireplace. So turned on the fireplace and then held my curtain here to block that reflection, because essentially if I'm here and the camera's pointing at this, it's going to be a 90-degree reflection. So that means I have to stand here to block what is being reflected off that 90-degree surface. So there we go, got my fireplace blended in. And of course I got my fixes. This one has an outlet down here, a bunch of speakers on the wall. We've got a flash over here, reflection from pointing my flash at the ceiling. And what else? There's another big reflection up here in this area. So take care of that. And now we have a much less distracting image, so we can focus on the design details that the architect wants to show off. Then we have this little area back here where there was a reflection of some patio furniture on the back patio. So we had to get rid of that because it was very distracting and we had nowhere else to move the patio furniture. So I think what I did was I took like some of this texture off this wall and just pasted in over here because the outside used the same kind of tiles. And then I just put a blur on it so that it kind of just blends in. So that's what I did there. And I had to put a curves adjustment layer on it because it was a little too dark. I also had to color balance it because it was not blue enough maybe. What did I do here? Yeah, I made it a little more blue because it was a little too flat gray. And then what's next? This little section here, just in this area, had a kind of a weird color going on. Very subtle, but there was kind of some greens up here that I took care of with a hue saturation adjustment layer. And then got my warming filter to warm up the whole scene. This is set at 40% on this image. There's without it, and there's with it. And then one final pop. And this one looks like a bigger pop. No, it's still linear contrast, but this pop gives it a lot of really good contrast to finish it off. So there you have it. Level 1 all the way up to 95 with architectural photo editing. If you like what you see, check me out on Instagram at Adam Taylor Photos, and go check out the educational content I have at adamtaylorphotos.com/education.